Burlesque by Kamari333. Chapter 15. Unexpected Behavior. After Lust hung up the phone, feeling both cared for and disappointed, he smiled at Grilby. "Is your hand okay?" Grilby looked down at his still discolored fingers, flexing them. The flames there slowly started to return to the usual healthy hue, although Grilby still looked shaken. "Yes, but what was that?" Lust grinned. "Both my datemates are a bit protective, but Red is especially concerned about my safety. He rigged this to ward off unwanted attention. Sorry again, sweetie. It sometimes glitches out and reacts to a threat even though there isn't one." "Is it hurting you?" Grilby asked, alarmed. Lust laughed. "Oh no, quite the contrary." He tugged on his collar with 2 fingers, a pleased rumble quivering in his ribs at the welcome spark of Red's magic on his vertebra. "Feels pretty good to me." Lust figured he'd neglect to mention some of the collar's other features. He'd almost forgotten about the location tracking bit until Red had let slip that he knew where Lust was. Lust didn't mind, of course. He'd agreed to it, and if he ever wanted his space from Red, he could take it off any time he wanted. Red had made sure of that. If the looks on Grilby's and Dance's faces were any indication, both of them would overreact about it, and Lust honestly didn't want to explain it when he knew they'd have questions he probably wouldn't be able to answer. Dance pulled Lust closer, side-eyeing the collar, his expression confused and wary underneath his cracked mask of contented apathy. Dance's hand tentatively came up, poking at the soft leather with a hesitant finger. Lust felt a responsive surge in Red's energy, but it didn't react as it had with Grilby. Dance hooked the same finger around the collar, a full-body shiver running through him, as he undoubtedly felt the same steady thrum of Red's essence that Lust had so quickly become accustomed to as the norm. A welcome norm, a comfortable norm, a relief. Grilby and Paps both watched on, Grilby with an increasingly uncomfortable, almost hurt expression. Papyrus with an increasingly amused one. Lust looked back to the bartender, smiling reassuringly. "See? Date mates?" Grilby asked quietly, like he just realized the words had left Lust's mouth. "Oh, yes, Red and I are dating. Turns out he's actually a big teddy bear, and this is Dance, my other boyfriend." Lust nuzzled into Dance's tense shoulder, covering his hand on Lust's collar with his own, squeezing gently. "Dance, this is my old pal, Grilby. He's always been there when I needed help." Dance looked up at Grilby again, his easy smile returning. "Nice to meet ya." He held out his hand, the one not still slung around Lust's shoulder, fingers curled around the collar. When Grilby shook Dance's hand, there was no whoopee cushion. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Dance," Grilby answered, his smile bright and eager, though Lust could see the lecherous, hungry spark in his eyes. He could guess what his old friend was thinking about. The idea of a 3-way wasn't unappealing if Lust were honest with himself. It was a shame Dance's stiff, yet still graceful, so graceful it was only after seeing him truly relaxed that Lust could tell the difference. Posture indicated he was not anywhere near the vicinity of open to the idea. But that was to be expected, wasn't it? The real shame was how greedy Lust was. Looking at Grilby, his Grilby, the elemental that had been there through all his drunken shenanigans and all his heat-induced idiocy, still feeling the residual warmth of his hands and arms around him, Lust couldn't really deny he was still in love. They were still friends, good friends, and Lust knew any addition to those feelings were one-sided at best, no matter how often Grilby had carried his limp body home at 3 a.m. No matter how many times he let him stay the night in the back room, in his lap between opening and closing. No matter how many times Grilby had pinned him to the wall of his pristine bathroom, and the two of them had fogged up the mirrors, gasping each other's names. "Why don't you two go sit down while I help Mr. Grilby carry all of our drinks?" Paps offered, ever the helpful one. Dance let go of Grilby's hand, smiling up at him. "I'll have a virgin mojito, watermelon flavor if you got it, and some ketchup." "Make that the same for me." Lust hummed, thinking it sounded delicious and unusually fitting as he guided Dance towards the booth he had shared with Red for so many wonderful nights. "Put everything on my tab," he called over his shoulder. When they sat down, Dance's grip on Lust's collar tightened, and Lust felt himself hold even closer. Surprised, Lust looked into his date mate's eyelights, which were boring unwaveringly into the recesses of his soul, a glint of calculating gold twinkling just behind those pristine white pinpricks. Lust shivered, going pliant in his arms, purring as he was hit with the feeling of waterfalls and ocean winds. "Can I help you?" he asked, unable to stop the smile on his face. Why was Dance so cute when he was serious? Dance responded by bringing his frontal bone to Lust, followed by his teeth, sockets drifting shut for a moment before fixing back on him. He didn't say a word, which was fine by Lust. It only meant Lust could snuggle closer, relax further into the gentle affections, and pretend it meant what he wanted it to mean. Papyrus leaned on the bar top, waiting patiently as the, understandably, shaken bartender mixed the drinks with a dispassionate lack of his usual flair. Usually, Papyrus would have been a bit more sympathetic, especially given how deeply he could empathize with the elemental's latest predicament. But Papyrus had watched how Grilby's unusually strong aversion to commitment, his seeming need to keep things casual, had torn his older brother apart and slowly stripped away his confidence. Papyrus wasn't ignorant of the fact that the gradual return of that very confidence correlated strongly with the arrival of those date mates into his life. There was a mild tension in the air between them, he and the elemental. Papyrus happily let him stew, swaying his hips to the beat of the club's bass-heavy music as he pretended to peruse the menu, his balance managed by his one elbow braced on the grainy surface while the index of his other hand daintily followed along with his vision. "I missed my chance, didn't I?" Grilby finally muttered, wry bitterness making his usual energetic flame smolder a dull burnt sienna along the edges. "You did not miss your chance," Papyrus reassured him. "You did little wheelie tricks around it, then sped off in the opposite direction, only to loop back and hope it was still there where you left it and not swiped up by someone else." Papyrus smiled wider. "I suppose this should be a lesson to you to never leave your valuables unattended." "You know I care about him," Grilby defended weakly, setting the first mojito down before starting up on the second. "Yes, I do, but I am not the one who needs to know, now am I?" Papyrus reminded him cheerfully. "Did you see the look on his face? How just thinking about those two made him feel?" "Yes," Grilby admitted with a reluctant sigh. "That is the same face he used to make about you, you know." "Now you're just being cruel," the elemental remarked. "I'm a very cruel guy," Papyrus admitted readily. "Or at least I can be, especially when a certain someone has nobody to blame but themselves." Grilby chuckled, shaking his head as he set the second drink down. Papyrus snagged a nearby tray, carefully putting both drinks on it. "But I am also merciful. Lucky for you. I am certain you have learned your lesson, and maybe, if you talk to his date mates, you can work something out, although given how Papyrus had to pause, covering his teeth as he fought down laughter. Protective they are of him. You may have some negotiating to do." "Like Sans needs protection." Grilby huffed, amused himself, carefully mixing the ice cream into the malt drink he knew Papyrus favored. "It's cute. I cannot wait to meet the other one, too," Papyrus admitted. "What's he like?" "I thought he was a prude," Grilby admitted, putting the malt on the tray. "Standoffish, irresponsible, maybe a little dangerous. He started coming in late at night, around when last call goes out at the other bars. I figured he was a lush who didn't like being cut off, but he never made a scene and paid his tab off every week, so who was I to turn down good business?" Grilby started frying up a batch of French fries, looking a little more like himself again. Weird thing was, he wanted nothing to do with the other customers. Hardly paid attention to the show or the serving staff. Made it very clear he didn't want any special services, if you get my meaning. Didn't think Sans was his type. Heck, didn't think he had one. "Well, you know what they say about assuming." Papyrus cackled, picking up the tray as soon as the fries and ketchup bottles had joined the drinks there. "Thank you, Mr. Grillby." With that, Papyrus carried the drinks over, hoping he'd given his brother enough private time with his date mate to smooth over the coiling tension in him. He still wanted to get to know him better. Dance settled the bitter, cloying envy in his ribcage by again smothering lust in attention. Gentle, predatory butterfly kisses and cruel, lingering touches reminding his jealous soul that he had absolutely no reason to be responding so viscerally to a single attempt at seduction that lust had ignored and Red's, admittedly well-placed, trap had repelled. Lust was here and was his and was safe. Dance wasn't thinking about how the same jealousy that had once also been directed at Red and should have been clawing at the inside of his skull and trying to wring a panic attack out of him, was curiously absent. Instead, he settled comfortably in the booth, tucking Lust against his side as close as possible, and waited until Pink joined them with their drinks and appetizer. The three of them had a pleasantly stress-free lunch. Pink asked him about his life, what his hobbies were, and what he did for a living. Dance found out Pink was working part-time as a barista. The way he said it, with a smile and a wink, implied there was more to the job than mixing drinks, but Dance wasn't going to push for details. To pay his way through engineering school. He was going for a master's in robotics so he could be more useful to his boyfriend Tauntaun, a ghost monster stuck in a robot body. Pink was surprisingly well learned already, and when he found out Dance was already an engineering PhD, he pulled out a set of blueprints from seemingly nowhere and asked for advice about a little glitch that had been bugging his mate. Dance offered what suggestions he could. After all, without looking at the actual hardware, he couldn't be certain, which Pink picked up on quickly. The two of them ended up talking shop for the bulk of 2 hours, with Lust smiling and listening quietly at his side. He felt sheepish about seemingly excluding Lust from the conversation, but when he went to apologize, Lust only kissed him and encouraged them to keep going. Pink took a picture of the exchange, giggling about it. Dance and Pink exchanged numbers, Dance offering to come help if they ever needed a second pair of hands. When lunch ended, and Dance again found he had consumed an ungodly amount of those watermelon drinks, Pink bid them both farewell with warm hugs, and Dance offered to walk Lust home. Dance wished he could just take Lust's hand and shortcut to his apartment. All this walking was beginning to ruin his lazy reputation. But he didn't know how he was supposed to break that little trick out to him. Maybe... "Hey, babe?" Dance asked after they had already walked half a block hand in glorious hand. Dance wondered dimly when it became so natural to address Lust by that pet name. He couldn't remember when he started using it, but it fell from his teeth as natural as breathing, like it was meant to be used that way, to refer to Lust and nobody else. "Yeah?" Lust answered without missing a beat, inclining his head towards Dance and watching him from the corner of his sockets, an easy grin tugging at his teeth. He didn't even stop walking, as though responding to that nickname was as natural to him as anything. The cerebral elation of that gradual realization had Dance's face burning, which he hoped didn't translate to any kind of humiliating light show. Dance gulped. "I might know a shortcut back to your place. Wanna see?" Lust paused, his stride slowing. "Sure, lead the way." Dance tightened his grip on Lust's hand, pulling him towards an empty alleyway. When he was sure they were both out of sight, he pulled Lust to his chest and sidestepped, sending them both through the gaps in space-time into Lust's living room. Dance held his breath, looking at Lust, hoping that the reaction wouldn't be... He didn't know what he wanted. Approval, acceptance, indifference would work. Lust blinked, looked around, then started laughing. That was not what Dance had expected. "What's so funny?" Dance finally asked. Lust pulled away, grinning as he hooked his thumbs in the pocket of his vest. "Don't blink," he purred, then took a step back and he was gone. Dance bristled, sockets widening with alarm. He felt a tap on his shoulder from behind, making him yelp and jump, startled. When he spun to face the source of his fright, warm bone was pressed firmly to his teeth and warm arms wrapped around his rib cage. Lust thrust his tongue out, probing, tentative, seeking sanctuary. Dance froze for the span of a heartbeat, then groaned appreciatively into the kiss, welcoming the visiting appendage with enthusiasm as he pulled his apparently mutually talented boyfriend closer, shaking with a mixture of relief and something akin to jubilation. The two of them eventually found the couch, and Dance texted his brother that he wouldn't be home for dinner tonight, as he reclined long ways over the cushions and Les snuggled on top of him. The whirlwind of emotions the day had broke upon them both finally caught up to them, and it wasn't long before Dance found himself drifting into a comfortable doze, lulled by the gentle thrum of Les' steady purring and his ever-present body heat. Dance would have said that the next 2 weeks were perfect, had they occurred a month ago. He went to work, had lunch with Lust, finished work, joined Lust at his apartment for a few movies, then went home for dinner with his brother. Through it all, Dance didn't see a single trace of Red. He didn't think anything of it for the first few days, and he was only mildly suspicious after the first week. But by that second Saturday, he knew what was going on. Red was avoiding him. Lust was seeing him every day. He always showed up after Dance had gone home, and stayed with Lust overnight. Twice, Dance tried staying later, up until midnight, to catch Red before he went home. Both times, Red never showed up until after Dance was gone. That fucking asshole was avoiding him. Dance stomped angrily out of the 7-Eleven, sucking down another convenient can of strawberry watermelon tea, a new extension to his recent addiction, which was thankfully easier to come across, and also came in tea bags he could brew at home. His brother was ecstatic he was drinking something other than ketchup now, as he rounded the corner into the alley and stepped right into Lust's living room. Lust was on the phone, his face lit up excitedly. "Sure, what is it?" Dance crept closer, holding a finger to his teeth, then pointing to the phone, followed by Lust's caller, hoping Lust would understand what he was asking. Lust caught onto his meaning right away. Dear God, how lucky was he to have such an insightful, clever monster as his boyfriend. Nodding that yes, it was Red on the phone. Dance made a phone-like gesture with his hand, a silent request, and with quiet, careful motions, Lust put the phone on speaker so they could both hear. Red's rough voice came through, only partially distorted by static. "Know it's short notice and you can say no, but I'm gonna have dinner with Boss tonight and wanted to know if you maybe, wanted to join us? You don't gotta. I get it if that ain't something you're interested in, or you'd rather hang with the grease monkey." Dance blinked at Lust, who looked positively elated at the invitation. "I'd love to," he answered, looking like he wanted to hug something. "Is this going to be a formal occasion? Should I dress up?" "It's just dinner at his apartment, nothing big. You don't gotta get dolled up. I sure as fuck won't be." Red chuckled, then went oddly quiet. Now, here's the favor. Since he's your pet and all," he continued, and Dance did not have the cognitive processes necessary to wrap his head around where the hell Red got that idea from, or why he was bringing it up now, or what that particular quality in his intonation meant when he said it. "Boss's invite technically extends to him, so, can you just drop the idea on him when you let him know what you're doing tonight, so I can say he got the invite and declined without having to lie to Boss?" Lust looked at Dance. Dance looked back. What would happen if he came?" "I'm guessing shit would get awkward. Boss would make him uncomfortable, and he'd insult my cooking," Red replied with more open honesty than Dance can ever remember hearing from him. He didn't miss how Red was slurring some of his consonants more than usual. Was he drunk? Was this what he was like when he and Lust were alone? "Do you not want him to come?" Lust asked tentatively. "Ain't about me wanting shit. Just, can you swing it?" "I think I can manage." Lust reassured him, his voice taking on that smooth, calming tone that set Dance's nerves at ease. "Leave it to me, sweetheart, and I'll see you tonight. 6:30? "Yep, see you then." There were a few seconds of continued static feedback, then the line went dead. Lust closed his phone, looking at Dance. "So, gonna RSVP?" "He's been avoiding me for 2 weeks," was the first thing that came out of Dance's mouth. And you don't like that? Lust asked, sounding surprised and pleased. I don't care, Dance lied, stuffing his hands in his pockets and shrugging. After all, how was he supposed to say he cared a lot without being able to justify why? Lust didn't need to know about this weird, stupid crush that Dance was never ever going to act on because nothing would ever come of it, and his soul and his head needed to just shut up about it and try focusing on the stable, functional, fulfilling relationship he had with Lust. Just an observation. Lust nodded, accepting his bullshit explanation without question or comment, although there was a shimmer in his sockets that made Dance think he could see right through him. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm a little nervous about meeting Boss. He sounds kinda intimidating. Lust put his phone in his pocket, then settled his arms on Dance's shoulders, straight so that his elbows were cradled in that space behind his clavicle, the tips of his distal phalanges brushing against the back of Dance's skull as he curled and uncurled his fingers in Dance's blind spot. I'll understand if you don't want to, but if you could come with me for moral support, I'd appreciate it. Dance made a show of thinking about it, tried to rearrange his face to show ample, believable reluctance before heaving a great sigh. All right, but only because you asked. Lust beamed up at him, victory lighting up his face along with his magic. Thank you, baby, he murmured, before stealing a kiss, licking at Dance's teeth and then at his tongue when he could reach it. Lust let out a criminally unfair noise, deepening the kiss and ravishing Dance's mouth, stealing away the lingering taste of his tea and replacing it with the taste of home. Dance pulled his mouth away, gesturing with his head towards the bedroom, his hands coming out of his pockets to grip at Lust's ilia, his thumbs making little circles into the wings. He was rewarded with a soft whine and a gentle tug before Lust pulled them through a shortcut and slammed the bedroom door shut with magic. When 6:30 rolled around, so did a shiny red Lamborghini. Lust got a text from Red saying he was out front. He and Dance left the apartment on foot, looking over the railing to see the car shimmering in the sunset in all its sleek, two-seater glory, with Red sitting stiffly in the driver's seat. Dance ground his teeth. Fucker was so sure he wouldn't show up, he only brought a two-seater car for transport. He didn't know how to feel about that, except he didn't like it. He also didn't like that he didn't like it. Dance couldn't repress the groan from bubbling out of him, and he found himself hiding his face in his arm against the railing. What's wrong? Lust asked softly, rubbing Dance's back. Dance thought fast. He looked back up at Lust, still leaning on the railing. Pretty sure that's the car that fell on me before, that threw my back out. Lust looked down at the car, violet light dusting his maxilla, glowing brighter and brighter until he was blushing vibrantly. He took Dance's hand and led him down the stairs, apparently not interested in sharing the thought that had crept through his mind. Red looked up at the sound of their approaching footsteps, his face frustratingly unreadable. Didn't think you'd be interested, he said casually, like it wouldn't have bothered him if Dance hadn't come. Dance squeezed Lust's hand. Clearly. He walked around to the passenger side, hopping into the seat and looking at Lust. You'll have to sit in my lap if that's alright. No argument from me. Lust hummed, gracefully vaulting over the car door and into Dance's arms before settling snugly between his legs. Dance wrapped his arms around him, pointedly not looking at Red as they situated themselves in the car. A minute passed, then two, and the car did not move. Dance finally looked over at Red, who was staring back at him with that large, single crimson eyelight. Well, aren't we going somewhere? Not till your fucking seatbelt's fastened. Red deadpanned. Dance froze, his mind coming to a halt as he processed and reprocessed the words, blinking dumbly back at Red, certain he could not have heard him right. Lust broke down into a fit of giggles. Dance, slowly, dazed, started to buckle his seatbelt, only now noticing that Red also had his fastened. He never, ever would have guessed this would happen today. Red only turned the ignition when Dance was firmly buckled in and Lust was firmly held to his chest. Lust had never been more entertained during a car ride in his life. The seatbelt comment was only the beginning. It was obvious after the first 5 minutes that Dance and Red had vastly different ideas about how one was supposed to drive this car. "You're going 15, Dance commented, finally breaking the admittedly awkward silence. "Yeah," Red acknowledged. Dance seemed to wait, as if he expected something to change from that observation alone. When nothing happened, he tried again with, "The speed limit's 20. "Yup," Red answered him. Again, no change. "This is a Lamborghini Aventador," Dance said slowly, like that was supposed to mean something. "Your point?" Red asked, apparently as confused about the name as Lust. "It's a sports car," Dance deadpanned. "You're driving a sports car 5 miles under the speed limit." "Again, your point?" Red said as he flipped his blinkers on, slowing to a halt at a 4-way intersection. As he decelerated, he stretched his arm out so it blocked the space between Lust and the dashboard, as if he were worried Lust would go flying from the change in velocity. "Oh my god, what the actual fuck?" Dance rumbled as he watched Red wait patiently for traffic to thin for his chance to make his turn. "What now?" Red said, shoulders tense and voice coiled with poorly masked irritation. "You did the mom arm." "The what?" "Oh dear god, he did!" Lust wheezed out loud, covering his teeth with one hand as he gripped Dance's arm with the other for some kind of grounding, shaking as he laughed. "The fuck's so funny?" Red demanded to know as he made the turn and started down the next street. "You did the fucking mom arm," Dance repeated. "You drive like Toriel when she has kids in the car." "I do fucking not!" "I've seen you peel out the driveway going from 0 to 80 in 0.5 seconds. I know you can fucking drive. So what the hell is this?" "That's when it's just me in the fucking car, asshole!" Red snapped. "Shut the fuck up and let me do this!" "I would if you would actually put some pressure on the gas." "There's a fucking speed limit!" "Which you're still going 5 under!" Lust was desperately glad he didn't technically need to breathe, because if he did, he was certain he would be dying. Dance and Red argued all the way to the other side of town, where Red pulled up to a high-security apartment complex. He had to lean out and enter a key code to get the gate to open, then drove into the garage to park the car. Lust jumped out, waiting for Dance to wrestle himself free of the seatbelt, as he looked around at the other expensive-looking cars also parked there, finding himself more than a little intimidated. He was glad he persuaded Dance to come along now. This was nothing like he was expecting from Red's brother. Red shoved his claws into his pockets, pointedly not looking at either of them, as he rummaged for something, eventually pulling out a pack of cigarettes and lighting one up. He took a long drag, holding the smoke in as if tasting it, before exhaling. He stuck the stick between his teeth, gesturing for Lust and Dance to follow him as he headed out of the garage and towards the elevator, with what Lust could see was obvious reluctance. Dance scanned the area, and Lust noticed his eyelights linger a bit longer in certain directions. When Lust followed his line of sight, he caught the faint shimmer of metal and glass near the ceiling. Security cameras. Lust casually slipped up to Dance and gripped his hand, before pulling him along until Lust could slip under Red's arm. Red side-eyed Dance as if gauging his reaction. Dance was conveniently looking in another direction. Red must have seen enough to satisfy whatever arbitrary criteria he now had for "it is okay to proceed," because he then used his free hand to input another security code into the keypad of the elevator, letting them all inside. Lust made sure to stay close during the elevator ride, careful not to comment about Red's nervousness as they went up to the 17th floor. Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening. If you liked it, hit the like button to let me know and subscribe to see what I make next. Links in the description lead to the original fic posted on AO3, as well as my Patreon and Ko-fi. If you like my stuff, please consider supporting me. Every little bit helps. Lastly, if you have a request for a recording, whether a one-shot or a series, let me know in the comments. I also do commissions, details of which are on my Patreon. So keep in touch. Bye!